I've made the point that these people who have won this $10,000 grant given out by the Bazooki Group, they're already so resourceful and they're already so passionate. They've been sharing their message in any way that they can. Don't
Right.
you agree with me when I say that like this $10,000 is going to go so far, like with
Yeah.
each of these people? Don't you think it's just going to be like every dollar, every penny is going to be used to the absolute maximum?
Right. I do. Well, I'm always amazed by the Bazookies that they are like putting all these seeds out and they're doing it so smartly. They're doing it to people who are already committed and going to make it grow more. And they're finding basic scientists. They're doing it around the world. It's like, it is amazing to watch.
Yeah, it
And
is. We were talking offline. It's miraculous. These angels came out of nowhere. Unfortunately, their son, the Bazuki family, their son, came down with bipolar, and they did everything to see, Matt Bazuki do presentations and show the laundry list of all the medications and treatments and
I,
flying all over the place, and nothing seemed to help. And they stumbled across, Dr. Chris Palmer, and now all their philanthropy is going towards metabolic psychiatry. And you're seeing the results. Like you said, they are as smartly as possible, getting money and resources out to people who are going to do amazing things with it. It's so cool to see.
right. No, it's like, I think that the ketogenic diet has a little life of its own. And, it's over 100 years old now. And it kind of went through this once before. I don't know if you knew about the Charlie Foundation. Did you know about?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So it kind of blew out. It was a treatment for epilepsy in every hospital in the country. It was, the only treatment. There were no other treatments. And then it slowly died away and nobody was doing it. And then Charlie got epilepsy, and his parents found, like the Bazooki's, and they were also wealthy, not as wealthy as the Bazooki's, but and they once he got better with a diet, like they said, no one told us it could be a diet. That same shock, a
Yeah.
diet, and after all these meds and all this stuff. And they started it and it grew. And Atkins then came in and said it was a weight loss diet. And then it started to but no, that the seizure part started to slowly die away. People didn't really realize it was effects on the brain. No one knew what to make of it. And then Matt Bazuki got well.
Yeah.
And it was like a match was lit. And Caroline and I were just there at that time.
Wow. Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. The Charlie Foundation, founded by Jim Abrams. I really regret that I was not able to, ever talk to him. He just passed away maybe like a month or two ago.
And,
But yeah, famous for, I mean, he directed the movie Airplane and eventually made
right.
a movie all about, epilepsy in his son and all the wonderful work that he did. And you're right. The ketogenic diet is kind of getting a life of its own. Like even in this last month, at a place where I collect spring water, twice separately, two different hockey games I went to go watch. Just random places at the grocery store. I've had people mention the word keto or carnivore,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh, my parents do this, and their joints feel way better." And I'm trying this in January, and like people are starting to figure this out and find out about this. Is actually quite amazing.
Right. It is. It is. It is. It's an
Yeah,
amazing diet. It's an amazing thing.
yeah, I agree. I think it was Travis Christofferson that wrote something about like the truth eventually, slowly, but eventually is going to come out. You cannot suppress it. You can fight it. You can try to hide it. You can cover it up with prescriptions or whatever. But eventually, enough people are going to find this diet. And it's certainly been my experience that a lot more people are learning about this. Pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's amazing. Well, over the years, I've had different ways of trying to get people interested in a low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet. And, at the very beginning, I would tell people like, wow, this is a cool diet because it helps people lose weight. And then it was like, we were learning about type 2 diabetes and like, wow, this is an amazing diet because it can reverse type 2 diabetes. And then we learn, about all the metabolic psychiatry. And this is amazing because it helps bipolar and Alzheimer's and all these amazing things. This is my new favorite way to talk about this diet. A ketogenic diet could potentially be helpful for anorexia nervosa. That is crazy to say. And it gets people's attention
right.
because you're telling them a very restrictive diet can be very helpful for a condition that everybody knows is all about restriction, and you should
I know.
never
I know.
recommend restrictive diets. But it's helping people. Like it can help people lose weight, but also help anorexic people gain weight, restore
I
weight,
know.
but also fix their brain. It's remarkable.
Well, Caroline was absolutely the first person to try it, and I was terrified. I was terrified
Sure.
because I know it's a weight loss diet. And the last thing she needed was to lose any weight. The other thing was she was eating mostly carbs. That was all she ate. Mostly, incredibly low calorie carbs or no fat carbs or carbs filled with Splenda or black coffee with a lot of Splenda. And I thought, I'm going to take away the one thing she eats and she'll eat nothing. And and I actually really wanted to do it, and Caroline and both wanted to do it. I wanted to do it in a hospital with supervision, with under support, but nobody would do it. Nobody would come close to it. I was even asked sometimes when I would, offer it at eating disorder conferences because it was just an idea. I mean, I didn't know if it would work, but they would ask me to leave and say I was disruptive and, talking about restriction and it's not what people need to hear. And it was just the antipathy to it was incredible. And then that's why I really give her amazing credit because she went and she trusted me. We trusted each other. And I trusted if she started to fall apart, we would get her right in a hospital. And and I remember her, as she started to say the voice is quieter, it's quieter. But it was I had a gut feeling it would happen, but I didn't know it would happen. And it was all based on the reading of the guy Russell Wilder, who described it for seizures. See, I was just reading and trying to find a way to help Caroline, and I kept focusing in on a couple of things, and it all kind of led there. One thing was she reminded me, well, there's a paper about it that it would be normal. I don't know if she told you about it, the adaptation to flee famine.
I learned about that from, I believe, your appearance on the Metabolic Mind podcast, where you talked a little bit
Okay.
about that. Fascinating. It's also in your book as well. I believe in the first
Yeah.
chapter.
When I read that paper, I just fell in love with it because I knew Caroline. I knew it wasn't from trying to look like a model. It wasn't from any big disruption in her family. It wasn't from any of the usual things that they were saying. Talk about your mother, talk about your father, talk about how anxious. And she didn't have that. She was just a normal, happy, athletic kid, went to summer camp, went on a diet, and never got out of the diet. She fell down into a metabolic hole and she couldn't get out. And it seemed so metabolic to me. So then I read that article and it said, why do these girls who often, they're not often the people who they say the models and the ballerinas, why do these girls do this? And she said, she was an evolutionary biologist, the author and the therapist. So she was seeing these kids one after another and it struck her. And I actually talked to her and became friends with her. It struck her that it would be normal in a certain way. And the way that it was normal was when we were hunter-gatherers, we'd face episodic famine. And what would be better if somebody was in that little small nomadic group and said, I'm not hungry. I feel great. As a matter of fact, I want to move. I want to exercise. Come on, gang. Come on, nomads. Come with me. We're going to walk. And if there was food, they'd give it to other people. They were not going to eat it themselves, give it away. And what they were doing was leading the tribe to, it was an evolutionarily conserved way to lead the tribe out of hunger, out of famine. And I thought, that's it. And I started reading about animals and what they do in famine. And of course, they migrate or they hibernate. And I was reading deep into the literature of how, and early humans migrated, and probably some humans are still migrating. Well, now we're having climate migration, but in the olden days, we had famine migration. And so how does the brain know there's a famine? Why does she think there's a famine? That became the question. What's the miss? What's not getting in? And there was this amazing study about hibernating animals. And we all know what causes the animals to hibernate. And Caroline struck me as being in almost a rogue hibernation. She was always cold. You get extra hair on their bodies. People with severe anorexia will keep warm. They do better in the summers. And the part that was made odd is that they move rather than hibernate. But it was like a rogue hibernation. So I studied what makes animals know that it's time to hibernate. It's a simple question. And there's a whole body of people who's doing research on it. And they take these animals and they put them in the lab and they figured out there are things that make sense. When the temperature gets cold, the animals hibernate. When the days get shorter, the animals know to hibernate. They usually eat a lot before the hibernation, and then they go into hibernation. But there was one thing that they hadn't noticed, and it was one of the powerful influencers. It was a change in the fat of nutrients. Nutrients in the spring have a different fat content than nutrients in the autumn. And if he gave them a diet that was still reminiscent of the outside spring diet when things are flowering, and made the laboratory dark and cold and waited for them to hibernate, they would not hibernate.
Wow.
It's a signal. It's a major signal. So I just thought it's fats. Fats are the signaling agent that Caroline, that's messed up. And how are we going to fix those fats? And for it was really years, I kept thinking we'll find an individual fat that's malfunctioning, and then I remembered a journal that I had heard about in medical school that the high fat, so you don't have to worry which kind is it, this cat or this fat or olive oil fat or coconut oil or this fats, just fats.